Why do big heavyweight fights rarely happen? Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to On Me Head Son. I hope you're all well. If you like what I do here, don't forget to like and share the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell for all future videos. So, heavyweight fighting in boxing. How hard is it to get these fights on? Now, I've got to say, before the Saudi money came along in this recent incarnation, now we're talking about December 23rd, and obviously Tyson Fury, he was just fought Ngannou, and then he's going to be fighting Usyk on February 17th, 2024. These fights weren't happening. All the really big fights, the big contests weren't happening. And each boxing promoter is always kind of having a dig at the other one. Oh, we came to the negotiations and it didn't quite work out. And he said this and she said that. And all of a sudden it's handbags at dawn and nobody is none the wiser. But ultimately these fights rarely get done. Now, recently, as we know, Frank Warren especially, or I would say Tyson Fury's camp and TalkSport have kind of had a bit of a falling out. In other words, Tyson Fury and his camp have banned TalkSport from attending. And this all comes down to where Usyk's manager was claiming that Tyson Fury was ducking Usyk. So TalkSport, all they said, and namely Simon Jordan and Adam Cattrall were saying, look, if Tyson Fury is ducking Usyk, then obviously there's a bit of an issue here, right? They've taken umbrage to that, and also some of the other things they were talking about, and basically mocking Tyson Fury for taking the Ngannou fight, as opposed to trying to get this Usyk fight on the way. Then, of course, there's been a lot of to and fro between Frank Warren trying to justify his position all the time and saying, no, we have been doing great fights. So there's been a lot of bit of to and fro. Now, recently, Frank Warren has had a go at Adam Cattrall, on a video interview as well. And, it's a little bit unnecessary, let's face it. I understand Frank Warren's position. So, look, we are trying the best we can. And this is for all boxing promoters. They are trying the best they can. But they're only trying the best they can if the money's right. So that's why these things take so long, because the fighters probably overvalue themselves. They want too much money, especially the big heavyweights and especially those who are right at the top of the game. They want too much money. They want to have the contract negotiations. And then they're stalling for the bigger pot. They're stalling to be the A side. They're stalling to come out on top of the game even before the fight is even fought. And this is what the biggest frustration is for the fans. It's almost like you're being sold a dummy pill here. It's the biggest placebo out there. You think you're getting something, you're handing something, and it's just not what you really wanted. We wanted the AJ Wilder fight. We didn't get it. We've got a couple of other fights. And I've kind of explained in previous videos why I think those fights are really decent fights in terms of world title prospects. But they're not the fight we wanted. We wanted Tyson Fury against Usyk. We never got it. Now, Frank Warren's position has always been, hold on a minute, no, we've really tried here. Usyk wasn't ready, Joshua wasn't ready, but Tyson Fury has always been ready, he's always been ready, yeah, it's always been ready. Well, Tyson Fury has supposedly been ready this whole last year, before he fought Ngannou, of course. He was right, he was ready the whole time. Well, he wasn't, he'd have to go into a camp, of course. But so was Usyk. Usyk got over his injury, and then in the middle of the year, he fought Dubois. Dubois is on Frank Warren's roster. So if he's on Frank Warren's roster, why is Dubois getting the fight and not Tyson Fury? So it's not about availability. They were both available at the same time. So then it comes down to the contract negotiation. We remember all that about the 70-30 split on what Usyk would be willing to take and what he accepted and what Tyson Fury didn't want to happen. And all of a sudden, it becomes a real nonsense. And then you're trying to find out, well, who's actually on top here? Why are these fights not happening? And then you get other decent fights like British title fights or Jilly Zhang against Joe Joyce. Decent fights. You've got a couple of other fights here and there. You've got the Usyk-Dubois fight. But for the most part, it's been slim pickings. And the reason is it's stalling at the promoter level. And it's not about availability. I've heard Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn talk about the available contenders at the time to make fights. Oh, they're not available. Well, I'm sorry, but there are other fighters available. So it's not about availability. What it comes down to is at a specific time over the course of a year where really your fighter should have at least had a couple of fights. Why aren't they having fights? Now, we could argue that the fights that could be taken against the available fighters wouldn't be high value fights. Okay, fine. I get that. And, you know, Tyson Fury has come under a lot of criticism for taking the Dillian Whyte and Chisora fights as well. But if they're the only fighters available in the top 15, let's say, that Frank Warren claims, then okay, fine. That's what we have to have. I don't buy that. I don't buy they're the only fighters, of course, but that's what we have to accept. But are you telling me at any other time in the last year, let's say, there haven't been any other fighters available? Well, of course there have. There have been lots of other fighters in the heavyweight division in the top 15 that have been available. At any stage, these fights could have been made. So what does it come down to? It's not about availability. We can knock that one out. It's about the availability of the big money fights. So all they're doing is holding out for the big money. That's all they're holding out for. They're holding out for the cash cow that was Saudi Arabia. And the sooner we all realise this, the better. It's got nothing to do with about fighting AJ or fighting Wilder or fighting Usyk or whatever. It's about holding out for the biggest payday. And whilst they keep on holding out, it causes a stall. Nothing happens. Everything is at gridlock because nobody wants to move. Nobody wants to accept a lesser purse because they're all holding out for the bigger payday. And this is what happens. You've got the likes of other fighters who have purposely not fought and their careers are basically over because they just haven't fought. They just haven't fought enough. They've overvalued themselves to the point where nobody wants to take them on as a fighter. No, I get it. Of course, this is an extremely dangerous sport. And you're getting in against, especially against a heavyweight who's got one-punch knockout power, who could do some serious damage. I get all that. That's not what we're talking about here. But we are talking at the very elite of heavyweight boxing, especially. And for me, this is ducking fights. It's not ducking fights on the availability of other fighters, because I believe they're there. It might not be always to the caliber that we believe it should be. Then if that's the case, we just don't do it for those higher purses. But if we're talking about top level heavyweight boxers, number 1 ranked versus number 2, number 3 ranked, world champion versus number 1 contender, other world champion versus number 2 contender, so on and so forth. Yes, you can go for the middle purses, let's say. If we're talking about a unification fight, if we're talking about an undisputed fight, yes, you can go for the big purses. But if you can't get those, what's more important? Is it the fight or is it the money? Now, to Tyson Fury's credit, if you want to call it that, he's always said, yeah, it's about the money. It's about the money. We're prize fighters. It's about the money. Okay, fine. If it's about the money, then what you could do, you could have 3 or 4 fights in a year, put these lesser opponents away, and you'd still earn the same amount of money over the course of the year. But what happens is you get inactive because you haven't fought in a whole year. You go up against a nobody, in boxing terms, like Francis Ngannou, and you almost get schooled. You almost get found out. Why? Because you've been inactive for the whole year. This is my feeling with Deontay Wilder as well. He's been too inactive in 2 years. He's had 1 first-round knockout win over Hellenius in 2 years. That's just not enough. That's just not enough ring time. That's just not enough competitive fighting, competitive boxing to be in tip-top condition. Whereas AJ, for all his ailments, let's say, for all the concerns around AJ, he has been active. He has been in the ring. Just like Joe Joyce, just like Zhilei Zhang especially, just like Joseph Parker. They have been in the ring. So you've got to give those guys a much better chance against those other guys. Why? It's purely about their recent history. So it's not about availability, so it comes down to money. But you're stalling the whole heavyweight division just because you're not going to get the maximum money that you want. So let's just bring back in the Saudi money for a moment. If the Saudis weren't there, guarantee we wouldn't be having any heavyweight boxing for another couple of years. We would have heavyweight contests, of course, but we wouldn't be having the big heavyweights because they just face off against each other. They just postpone things and delay things, and it just go on and on and on. You've got to say, at least the Saudis have come to the party and said, no, money's no object. Let's just do it. But the problem with that, and I've said this in a previous video as well, the problem with that is when that Saudi money goes, or they divert it to maybe to other sport, or maybe to other boxing weight divisions, then all of a sudden heavyweight boxing is going to be left out in the cold. So then they're going to have to revert back to trying to get fights made in UK, in the United States, for example, or around Europe. And it's going to be the promoter against the promoter, not all singing off the same hymn sheet, not trying to work with each other and all be pally-pally and all defending each other now. It'll get back to them competing against each other and trying to get the best deal for their fighters and also the best percentage for themselves. I get all that. But at the same time, they've got to come together, continue to come together to get these fights on and say, look, you're not going to get 10 million, but you might get 6 million. Are you going to take the fight? What the fighters should do is say, yeah, I will take it. You're not going to get 3 million, but you get $1.5 million. You're not going to get $1 million, you get 500,000. You're willing to take it. Yes, let's get this fight on. I need to fight. All the heavyweights in the heavyweight division need to get that hunger back to want to fight. So they need to be pushing their promoters, and I'm sure they are. The promoters want to have that hunger to get their fighters back in the ring. Because we as the boxing public or the fan base, we want to see these fights. We want to see these fights every other week. That's what we want to see. We don't want to see the heavyweight division be stalled, or now there's this momentary blip with the Saudi money and then it returns back to the way it was. Get these fights made. We want them to fight. And if they say they're good enough to fight, well, let them prove it. Let them show who is the best. And for me, that's the only way it works. It's not about availability. It's all about money. But at some point, you've got to say, we're going to have to forego some of this money just to get these fights on. Because otherwise, nobody ever fights. No valuable fights will take place. No substantial fights will take place. And that's why a lot of the boxing fan base has kind of gone over to the UFC as well. Because they're doing it. Now, I know there's a bit of a hold-up in the UFC heavyweight division right now because of injury, John Jones. But essentially, they get the fights on. This is what boxing could always learn from the UFC. They always say, what can we learn from the UFC? What can we learn from Misfits? All this sort of stuff. I tell you what you can learn is that you get the fights on. It's as simple as that. You get the fights on. The fighters get paid a good wage, but they don't hold all the power. You've got to fight. That's it. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like what I do here, don't forget to like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notifications bell for all future videos. And I'll catch you again on another video coming very soon. Bye now.